Shalom, shalom. To start this off, I want to give all honor, all glory, and all praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachah Kodash, double honors to our apostles and our elders of Great Millstone, GMS Ruel, whose labors we have entered into, to the 144,000, the rest of the chosen elect, to you I say shalom. And to the Akim and Akwaf that may be tuning in, may this lesson uplift your spirit as we enter into these trying times. This is the brother Halalyum from the Great Millstone branch of Chicago coming at you with another lesson in truth. And this lesson stems from, this video I came across on IG, which, is also another video within a video, that came from X, formerly known as Twitter, of what seems to be a AI video, of Iran basically showing, all the victims of, Esau Edom's wickedness. It's called, as you can see, it's called One Vengeance for All. Iran bombs the Statue of Liberty with the head of Baal. So I'm going to let this video play, and may this lesson be edifying.
Video entitled One Vengeance for All. You got to take a look at this.
One vengeance for all. And in the lesson, not in the lesson, but in this video, you see the Gadites, the Ammonites, standing in the destroyed, land as a result of the bombs that, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, basically showing all the, different races and ethnicities, as Esau would call it, whose countries and lands have been destabilized as a result of Esau Edom's wickedness, man. Through Esau Edom committing ethnic cleansing, rape, robbery, murder. And then these are all the, the heathens and the Israelites that are scattered abroad, and from the 12 tribes that have been affected as a result of this man's wickedness, man. And it's funny, it even shows the Epstein Island. The island with those rich, powerful, wealthy Edomite elites, those billionaire CEOs and politicians were going over there to, sex traffic and, occasionally, well, not occasionally, but frequently murder, torture and commit acts of cannibalism on children. So, hey, this devil is being called out for his wickedness, man. And eventually pursuing Ezekiel, the 38th chapter, in Joel 2:20, and Joel chapter 3, it speaks of a great war in which Babylon the Great will eventually, be engulfed in nuclear flames, by these other nations. And Babylon the Great is America today. And this devil is about to have the rug officially pulled out from under him, and it couldn't come soon enough. And it couldn't come at a better time than now. But this is Obadiah chapter 1 and verse 1. The vision of Obadiah, thus saith Yahweh power concerning Edom. So this refers to the Edomites. Who was Esau Edom's day? The so-called white man. Beginning with the elites, as our apostles always talk about, the international bankers, the elites of Esau Edom, who have been responsible for a large portion, not a large portion, but the majority of the world's problems, man. Through funding wars from both sides, hoarding money from individuals, setting up central banks all over the world to drain the money from his people. These devils have been a problem. But it says, we have heard a rumor from the Lord, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen. Thou art greatly despised. That's right, man. These devils are greatly despised all over the world. And, and for a good reason, because these devils have gone throughout the earth, shedding the most blood, committing the most atrocities. But yet, they try to push forth a decent public image. That they have somehow convinced, this world that they are the heroes and that everybody else, particularly the Israelite man, is the villain. But everyone knows who the common denominator and who the common problem is in the earth, man. Verse 3, the pride of thine heart have deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, which is of course referring to, when Esau Edom, who originally is from Mount Petra, but also they lived in a beast-like state, back during the medieval period, and they were actually living in caves, man. Living in the Caucasus Mountains, living like beasts, doing all manner of vile acts, man. And you can go into that history when you read Job, the 30th chapter. It says, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord. And that's what we see going on. That's what we see occurring right now. These devils are falling. Let's get John chapter 10 and verse 16. It says, matter of fact, no, that's the wrong scripture. Let's get Micah. I'm on break right now at work, so this lesson won't really be that long. Just hit a couple scriptures and I'll end it. But this is Micah chapter 2 and 1. Woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. When the morning is light, they practice it, because it is in the power of their hand. And, these Edomites, these elites, they have the power to devise iniquity. They have the power to be able to go into a country, set up military bases all throughout it and destabilize a nation, draining a nation of its natural resources and bringing the people of that land to poverty and starvation, by bombing and turning entire cities and land masses into rubble, like what they did to Gaza, what we see going on over there with that genocide that those Amalekites carried out, those so-called, those J-ish people, which are the modern day Amalekites. They have the power to practice iniquity, and they practice it every day, day in and day out. Verse 2, and they covet fields. The word covet means desire. They covet fields and take them by violence, in houses and take them away, so they oppress a man in his house, even a man in his heritage. So like I, established earlier, they desire to own and control the majority of the world's resources, man, which has led them to invade lands, waging illegal wars on these different nations, with Iran being one of them. You can do your own research on this, but man, members of Trump's own administration flat out admitted that Iran had no plans on attacking and doing any harm to America. And that the only reason they got involved is because they were ultimately pressured by who? Those Amalekites, man. They were pressured by Israel. Those Edomites that dwelled in the Holy Land that, converted to Judaism, to the Talmud, as we call it. So, I ended off with Isaiah chapter 14 and 4. And this is what we see occurring right now. It says that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon, which the modern day, daughter of Babylon is America. And who's the modern king of Babylon? That's Donald Trump, Nero 47, who we also believe to be that cruel Lord that's mentioned just 5 chapters above this one, Isaiah 19, that would oppress the people and, cause chaos, to increase in the earth and in the Western Hemisphere, man. But really throughout all the earth, seeing as he's waging wars on Iran and has plans to take over Greenland and Cuba and other land masses, man. It says that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon and say, how have the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased. The Lord hath broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers. And that's what we're seeing going on right now. The Lord is slowly but surely crushing the power of these wicked elite bankers, CEOs and royal families that have controlled this earth and wickedness, man. They're controlling the money. The Lord is breaking the staff of the wicked and bringing these people down low. Verse 6, he who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke, like we showed in this video right here, that AI video showing all the different countries and nations, they got destabilized by Esau Edom's government, Iraq, Yemen, it's funny, at the beginning of the video, they showed Gad, the Gadites, man, the so-called native Indians, and they were dealt a very bad hand by you devils, man. Our brothers that was already over here, you devils killed hundreds of millions of them. You made treaties and you broke every last one of them. You devils are unapologetically wicked and morally and ethically corrupt, man. And the Lord is eventually going to destroy you, man. It says, he who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke, he that ruled the nations in anger, is persecuted and none hindereth. The whole earth is at rest and is quiet, they break forth in the singing. Yea, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon saying, since thou art laid down, no feller is come up against us, man. So when this devil is finally taken down, when the kingdom of Yahweh Shai is being established, the earth is finally going to be at rest, man. Because this devil has done nothing but destroy the earth. These different, conglomerates and Edomites and these industries, these scientists that have been poisoning the food supply, Bill Gates, to Fauci, these tech billionaires that are claiming that AI is going to replace humans and humans will no longer be needed, and these elites, man, that are at the top of the pyramid of the hierarchy, so to speak, man. When these devils are finally brought down, the earth will be at peace, because this is the man that smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke. But the time is now come where he is going to be smote in wrath with a continual stroke by Yahweh Bashim Shai and by his men, man. So I hope this lesson was edifying, and I want to give all honor, glory, and praise to Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, Bashim Kakodash, double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well and teach well. And until the next lesson, Lord willing.